Let's get to Cronulla, one of the other big spooks of the year. Their draw looks pretty good too, I believe.
I think it's probably the best
Got
draw.
the best draw on paper here. They play all the geeks for most of the season. So everything's set up. New coach. They've got some cavalry in. They have looked good at times last year. So on paper, they've brought up Jaden Barrell, Cade Dykes, Finucane, big one from the Storm, Nico Hines from the Storm, Ikavalu from the Roosters, Jack Martin, McGuinness comes across. And what was it last year? Wasn't in play.
No, he was signed for this year. He was still at the Dragons last year.
And Lockie Miller, Ryan Rivet. They've lost Phil Chambers, Dugan, Sean Johnson, Nina McDonald, Billy Magoulias, RIP, Chad Townsend, and Aaron Woods.
He didn't die.
Where has he gone? Remember Billy Magoulias?
He's gone to Warrington, so I mean...
he was going to be...
He's going to cure cancer.
He
I was going to say, if there's ever a player who didn't get a proper crack in the NRL, it probably deserved to. It's him, isn't it?
Yeah,
well, that probably points to attitude more than anything, realistically, because it looked like he had the skills there, and there was a couple of years where he just didn't get a crack, so there's obviously a reason for it.
So do you want to crack at the 1 to 17, or you...
I haven't even thought about it,
All right, let's go why don't we go something like Kennedy, Hiroti, Ramian, Ikavalu, Mulatano, Hines, Trindle, Woods, Brayley, Tolman, Talakai, Niokoro, McGuinness at 13. I can't read that handwriting there. Graham, Tracy, Teg Wilton, and there's probably some really obvious I've just not been able to read.
Who did you have on the wing? Hiroti? Katoa will be on the wing.
Katoa and Hiroti in the centre. I think Cavallo in the centre.
I don't think Hiroti will play centre either. I think you'll have Ramian in the centres.
Connor Tracy, you reckon?
They might even put Ikavalu in the centres.
Well, that's what I had, Ikavalu and Ramian.
And then you got Mulatano and,
Anyway,
Mulatano
take it away, Bun.
Centres, the wing. Mate, they've recruited well. They haven't done a lot of recruitment, but they've picked the positions that they needed. Their defence was the issue that they missed their 8 last year. They lost 6 or 8 games by less than 6 points. You know what I mean? And that comes down to being leaky in the middle. I mentioned it all last year. Their defence in the middle was horrendous at times. Some of those older bodies just hanging arms out and not putting the shoulder in. Your fix for that is Finucane and McInnes. If you can keep them fit and on the field all year, they're going to make 30, 40 tackles each every game. They're going to be a stronger squad than what they were last year. There's a little bit of dead wood there that's been chopped out in Chambers and Dugan. Johnson, a bit disappointed they lost Johnson, actually. I think he would have been a real good fit in this team with Nico Hines coming in to play 6. But
Trindle will start 7?
I dare say Trindle will play 7, at least to start the year.
Watch him start, Moylan. It'll happen. If we've not seen the last of Matt Moylan.
Do you start Moylan at 7?
I don't think so.
Like,
you could do worse if that's what you're playing.
Well, if you looked at the back end of last year,
he played okay.
Trindle's last 3 or 4 games
legs
were fantastic. He got the team around in position. I think he was, if you want to go into Supercoach stuff, he was scoring 80 and 90 points for the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. He was doing some good things there. So I think there is something there. His defence is a little bit suspect at times, but he seems like a pretty good player, that Trindle. I expect him to take probably a month, maybe 6 weeks to get the halfback combination going. But they've got a bit of a softish start to the season. So if they can jag a couple of those games where they could play poorly and still get the win, then that's a good setup for the season. They look a little light on depth with their playmakers. We mentioned Moylan, but there doesn't seem to be much else sort of floating around there. I'd imagine Dykes is a half or a 5'8", considering he's old man, but I'm not sure.
Unless during the year, let's just say Moylan and Trindle aren't playing well, you want to shuffle the side a bit and maybe Tracy comes into the halves. I know he can. Well, the halves are his preferred position, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, it is. But I dare say he'll be the 14 to start the year. He just seems to have a good impact when he comes in off the bench. They've got some good young. I really love Mulatano and Ramian. You've heard me bang on about him before. Katoa was a season pro at finishing tries. I'm pretty excited, to be honest. I think they'll be back in the top 8, and I think they'll be pushing some of the better teams towards the end of the year. If they can win those close games, I've got them finishing in 6th position. So.
Their first 6 rounds are Raiders, Eels, Dragons, Knights, Wests, and then Storm. It's a pretty good start to get your combos right. Ollie Yeah, take it away.
Well, just bringing up the halves, it's interesting. I think you might have a keen eye, especially on the All-Stars game tomorrow, because I believe Hines and Trindle are actually the Indigenous All-Stars halves. So, I mean, if they both have a blinder in that game, I think, at least for many people, there won't be an argument, especially if Trindle plays well, because Hines is going to be there. They seem like the quintessential sixth team in the comp. Like last year, even Parramatta, I think across the board, pretty much everyone had him tipped to finish sixth. It was like the most popular prediction, and they did. I feel like that's going to be the same with Cronulla this year. I feel like there's that sort of side, although
I feel
Parramatta
like
had to regress to get there last year.
Than
Para sort of regressed to get there, and Cronulla are sort of getting up to that point. Will probably go forward in the future. I'm really looking forward to seeing, I know it's not just his second year in the comp, but seeing Will Kennedy sort of kick on after having that breakout year in 2021. If he keeps playing consistently well, and this is a compliment to him, I think he'll end up possibly being that player in terms of rep selection, and that it's like if he was playing in another era, or if there weren't so many good players ahead of him, he'd be playing Origin, for example, because I thought he was near their best player last year, because you saw for half the year it was sort of, even those older guys, they sort of ended up dropping off towards the end, even when they had that purple patch, but it was the back five that remained consistent, in particular Will Kennedy, Jesse Ramian and Mulatalo as well. Those were sort of the three that sort of held it together in those last few weeks, and those were the only ones who were sort of putting in that consistent effort where you could see they were playing well. And to add Matt Ikuvalu to that, that was a very big shock to me when I saw they'd signed him, but I think it's a really savvy signing. I think he's definitely got a lot to offer. I thought he would have been starting at the Roosters next season now that Brett Morris has retired, but they were happy to let him go, and now he's at Cronulla. And I think this is all to Cronulla's benefit, because I think he is definitely someone who's been a first-grade player this whole time, who's shown it when he's been given the opportunity, but he's just had those players in front of him. Now that he doesn't, I think he's sort of got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. So I'm really looking forward to see him play. And, of course, Hines and Finucane as well. Finucane adds that experience. I mean, it's sort of the right signings for your team, not necessarily all stars, but it's the right signings that you want to be making. And I think Cronulla will capitalise on that and finish sixth.
Coming?
Yeah, I think they're a better squad than last year with Finucane, McInnes. As long as they don't play Ikuvalu on the wing, because under the high ball, and that's why the Roosters have gotten rid of him, because under the high ball he's horrendous, and he was only ever going to be a winger there. So I reckon that's why they've gotten rid of him, because they've had no intention of playing him centre. But he's a decent enough player to play in the centres in Cronulla's side, because Mulatalo and Katoa are the wingers. 100%, and they're great finishers. Look, I think the Sharks will make the 8. I've got them in that 7th, 8th kind of spot. The two that I was sort of tossing up on, I think the Sharks will take one of those two spots. I think McInnes is really good as the 13. I think he's got the ability there to be that ball player kind of thing, if that's the way they've sort of trained him, because he's not your quintessential lock. He's not very big, so he's not your hit-up guy.
No.
He's more
of his ass off and bit of ball play.
That kind of bloke with a bit of ball play, and I think that'll help him, because last year, and I like Toby Rudolph as a player, but he's not a ball player. As a 13, he's a front rower. So I think now the way the game's played, you've got to have that 13 ball playing to get everyone wider.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you don't have that 13 getting your ball to your 7 and your 6 that are playing the same side or whatever, I think you're struggling. And I think McInnes has got the ability to offer that. He's a hooker that can pass a ball. So, look, they're ahead of the game. I agree with Barn. They've got rid of some dead wood, and they've replaced it with not superstars, but blokes that are professional, that put in every week. And, no one, we didn't mention the coach. I'm tipping he's going to do a good job. He's highly regarded. He's worked at the Roosters under Trent Robinson in a system that's been successful. So I'm sure that he'll...
Wales defensive coach.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got plenty to offer as a rookie coach in terms of that. So I think that the Sharks, it's an upward spiral for them. If they didn't make the 8, I think that they would see that as a fail.
Yeah. All the supporters would definitely be
I think it's a fail for them if they don't make the 8 this year.
I don't know if you guys would go this far, but I'm probably tipping Cam McInnes to be the signing of the season, just from what I've seen from him. In the past 5 years that he's played, obviously didn't play last year through injury, but he's been the top tackler in the NRL 3 out of those 5 years in the entire competition. Those 2 other years where he wasn't, I think he was top 3. the one thing you can guarantee with Cam McInnes, whether he's going to play lock, but let's just say if you played him at hooker or lock, no matter what, you're going to get a good defensive player who's probably going to make near half the team's tackles every game.
He doesn't miss many,
So,
the only issue probably for the Sharks is that they're going to be having 3 blokes in the forward pack. If it's Brayley, McInnes and Wade Graham that aren't big bodies. So you've got 3 blokes that are making you a bit small. Brayley's probably not going to come off and McInnes probably not going to come off. Mm-hmm. And Wade Graham's generally a player when fit that doesn't come off either. So
I can see Wade Graham's minutes being very slashed.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
I think they have to.
Does that make you?
Does he last a year? It's the other scary thing.
That's right.
And this is the thing about the other half of the couple of little, the old daggy pokes is the just ask Mariah. The couple of little ones I'll throw out is that the other half of their forward pack was a spruik forward pack a year ago, and they didn't step up. Halmanueli, Talakai, Rudolph, we all thought were going to grow into superstars. They haven't. Even Niokora was, I thought,
Talakai was sort of on and off with a bit of injury.
Is there a depth issue there? Is it? Will they be better for the? Will Finnegan?
Well, Hunt will come back in as well with the season of injury.
And T. Wilton, he's not a bad player, and Williams is not a bad player. So
I don't rate Williams.
But at a pinch, Barney, I think that he's as good as backup as other teams have got.
Sure.
When you're looking at your second stringers, he's as good as second stringers from other clubs.
And he's still going to get, obviously, he's still fairly young, so he can get better.
Yeah, so
they've got enough there with the big bodies to rotate, as you mentioned, with Rudolph, Ueli, and I'm really looking forward to see Hunt come back. I know he's not a massive body, but he's a very strong player. Talakai, again, sort of shorter in stature, but he's a wrecking ball when he gets on the end of a good ball with half a gap. So
you're going to play. You go through those players, and I know they're going to start Wade Graham, and I love Wade Graham as a player, but is he another Jared? Is there a spot for him?
I'd be surprised by the end of the year if he's not playing 40 minutes or not playing.
But is he
on the
like
bench.
the Jared Croker and the Josh Jackson?
100%.
Is he one of those?
I would have
those
him,
guys.
and I've loved Wade Graham.
I'm seriously concerned about his head injuries that he copped last year.
I can see him being medically retired.
He barely got touched in that last one, and he was out for the rest of the season.
It's actually quite surprising in the modern age, and the more you read about CTE and all that sort of stuff, that he's actually even playing anymore. But
brilliant player, don't get me wrong.
What he's done over the years, of course, but I agree with your point. Your
body fails you at some point.
And the very last thing I mentioned, because we haven't really talked about it, is Nico, I guess, playing 6. I guess that's going to lead to a lot more sweeping plays, backline plays. Are you comfortable with that?
Kennedy there too. They're both going to be running that play beside each other, basically. So
you're happy with Nico?
Centres might get cut out a little bit.
Is there some not the same Matt Burton concerns?
I dare say they're going to probably trying to get him to straighten up a little bit because Kennedy plays that sweep play so much.
Is his kicking game first grade?
I have no idea about his kicking game, to be
honest.
Honest.
It didn't look
I think a lot of it's
I'll tell you, you've got to be concerned.
A lot of it's going to come back to Trindle with the kicking game.
You've got to be concerned with Nico, only at the fact I think he's a good player, but 99% of players that leave Melbourne, when they go to another club, they don't fulfil the potential they look like they've had. He's been in a side where he's started, 20 games, maybe, played a lot of games off the bench, played fullback, hasn't played much 6.
Yeah, of those 20, he played probably 15 at fullback.
I think he'll be successful because I think he's a good footballer, but I think, again, he's on that Matt Burton thing. It's a wait and see.
He's going to need to straighten his game up a bit more. He's going to have to go into the line a bit more and probably take a few hits and then get Kennedy on that sweep on the outside.
And the thing Burton has on him is a 60-metre boot or an 80-metre boot, which I haven't seen.
I think a lot of the kicking is going to come back to Wade Graham down a short side, or Trindle is going to basically have to run the kicking game for the Sharks.
Any dad?
Not much, other than I wouldn't be as concerned about Nico Hines as I am about Matt Burton, put it that way, because I still think you bring up a good point about Melbourne don't usually let players go who go on to greater success, but I think, and I'll chuck Finucane in there as well.
We're about to find out next 2 years because there's 15 of them.
I think Finucane you put in a different basket. I think
I'd even go
approved.
It's tried and tested.
I would even go Hines as well, to the extent that Melbourne Craig Bellamy seems to know when a player's reached their peak or when they're not going to go any further, and he's usually happy to let them go. There was a little bit, even though Melbourne lost out because their budget wasn't as big as Cronulla, they still tried to do what they could to keep a Hines.
I don't think they were
and a
happy to get
Finucane.
rid of Hines.
Yeah.
The only reason I think they did is because they got Pappenhausen there.
But he wanted opportunity.
yeah.
Well, you know what? It's the same as Matt Burton. Penrith didn't want to lose Matt Burton either. But it's about opportunity.
And
for
Matt
those
Burton
blokes.
could have stayed. And good on Matt Burton, because Matt Burton could have, I feel like they would
made a
have,
career as a centre at
as
Penrith.
a centre and been a New South Wales centre.
100%.
Without a shade of a doubt. And they probably would have backed him over.
But he wants to back
Whoever's
himself to play in the position that he wants to play.